most of you guys are doing this level for the first time. So that's great. That's fantastic. But let's just make sure that we know what this is going to look like. We have an even split in this group between, those that are doing third year versus the diploma. So obviously understand whichever group you fall into, maybe like slightly different, but obviously your exams are going to be the same. Your stuff is going to be the same regardless of whether you're doing third year or whether you're doing advanced diploma. Fine. So first, there is a massive, massive gap between second year and third year, right? So if you've just come out of second year and you're starting third year now, you have got a serious wake-up call coming. It is not the same game at all. Okay, so it's one thing to say.
It wasn't always like that. I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't always like that, right? So I think, that's why I said, like, we need to just back up a little bit. So what happens is that the profession changes, the world changes, society changes, and people look at chartered accountants and go, we need them to be doing more than what they're doing, different to what they're doing. We need our chartered accountants to be more efficient on technology. We need them to have different skills, whatever the case is. So SAICA has to keep looking at the profession and going, and society, and going, what is it that our CAs need by the time that they're done? And that is how they build that into your studies. Now, what has happened over the past few years, I don't know if you're aware of it, but your second board exam has changed. It used to be, your second board exam used to be a PPE, public practice exam. It is now called an APC, an assessment of professional competence. So a few years ago, the second board exam changed. And this left a really big gap between the first board exam and second board exam, right? So it's like everything you're doing feeds into the next level. But if one of those levels move, it means there's a gap between that level and the next level, right? And that means it's a higher jump for you to get there and you struggle to pass. Over the past few years, SAICA has shifted ITC to become a lot closer to APC. So there's a very small gap there now, but the problem was then that there's now a big gap between CTA and ITC. So between your postgrad and your first board exam, there's a bigger gap, right? So that then means that a lot of students who pass CTA can't pass the first board exam because there's a big gap. Then, of course, SAICA and the universities shifted CTA to make sure that CTA is now at the level that it needs to be for ITC. But then what happens from there is that there's a big gap left between CTA and third year. So in a lot of cases, and you'll know from all the pass rates, etc., students are passing third year, they're getting into CTA, but they can't pass CTA. CTA has a notoriously bad pass rate, especially at UNISA. Obviously, the way to fix this is to keep third year closer to CTA to make sure that when you leave third year, you're far more prepared for CTA and you will be able to pass. That is why CTA has changed. That is why your third year has changed. And I think this year, 2022, we're seeing a lot of change come through. A lot of exams were very different. In 2021, I have a lot of students repeating third year and the advanced diploma because 2021, the questions started changing, things started shifting. And now this year, you can see they're shifting even more. So when you look at your stuff, whatever you're looking at, the levels, the types of questions, the way that the year is set up, your starting point is to understand that the purpose is to bring you closer to CTA. So before we start asking, like, what do I need to do? That is the first thing I want you to be aware of. The biggest way and the biggest practical thing that this means for you is that you're going to be writing 4 tests and an exam. Instead of your normal undergrad approach, which is, do your assignments through the year and then you have one final exam that, that your entire mark is dependent on, you are now going to be writing 4 tests through the year and one final exam, which is exactly the same way that CTA works. So if you've seen your TUT letters and you're kind of like, what is the difference between the assignments and the tests? What are they doing to us? Do they want us to fail? That's not what's going on. They're trying to simulate the CTA process as much as possible. Does that make sense? Are you guys happy with that? Does that kind of explain why things are going to be changing?
It is important to mention here that if you passed second year, if you're wondering, you have what it takes to pass third year, but it is going to take a different approach from second year.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds very scary when you say it like this, the gap.
I know, I remember,
but I remember when, for me, it was from third year to CTA, back when we studied, there was that big jump. And I remember I got distinctions, especially for Mac, that's my subject area. I got a very good mark, and then I failed Mac in CTA, the first few tests. So the gap was huge. But if you get entry into third year, then you have what it takes. But you are going to have to change the way. You can't do the same things you've done in second year. That's
yeah, 100%. So I think, the starting point is be aware there is a change. And the change is not UNISA hates you. They want you to fail. They don't care. They don't know. They're saying, I really need you to be working on CTA level skills. I really need you to be working. I really need you to be working towards that. Please don't freak out, and Gobani. I hear what you're saying. Like, it is scary. It is scary, right? It is like, oh my goodness, what's happened? What's happening here? However, the beautiful part about this is that you're hearing this in January, right? You're hearing this in January, and you're not in CTA yet. So yes, it is scary, but how horrible would this be to find out, that this is what's going on in September? You're hearing this in January. We have time to figure out what this means to you. Okay. I don't want you studying as though this was second year and kind of going, oh, okay, this is just the same. It's like second year, but we're just going to carry on a little bit, only to hit July, August, September and realize I have no idea what's going on.
And that happens so often with us. I told you this afternoon, like how many students contact us 2 weeks before the exam, and now they want to know what should they do. Or after the exam, and then they realize they did something wrong this year. They're not sure what, but they studied the whole year, did all the theory, everything that they think they should have done. And now they got this big surprise. So, yes,
100%.
At least if you are aware now, you can approach it with that in mind.
100%. So we understand why things are changing. And I need you to keep that in your head, because as you go through stuff, it's going to be very easy to fall into the it's not fair, they hate me, they don't want me to pass thing. Totally understandable. But now let's talk a little bit about what that change is. Without getting into any kind of details or like subject specific stuff, let's talk a little bit about what that change is. The easiest and the simplest example is one that I always end up going back to the same. We can kind of think about it as learning to drive a car. Okay? If you're learning to drive a car, if you're in second year, the way that you're learning is basically to learn a whole bunch of instructions of how to drive a car. First, you need to get into a car, you need to get in, you need to put the key in the ignition. But predominantly what you're learning is a whole bunch of steps of how to drive a car. Most of your questions you'll pass most of your questions on the basis of being able to repeat those instructions. If you can remember the instructions on how to drive a car, you'll be fine and you'll pass second year. Okay, so it's like driving a car. I can recite to you how to drive a car. First, you must do this, then you must do that, then you must do this, then you must do that. And that's fine, right? Except that being able to tell you how to drive a car is not the same as actually driving a car. So in second year, you could say, here's how to drive a car. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, etc. And then in third year, they're now going, okay, get in the car and drive. And these are two very different skills. The fact that you can recite instructions of how to drive a car does not mean that you can actually drive the car. The difference between second year and third year is in second year, they're focusing on the information and the knowledge. I need you to know this, and I need you to know that, and you guys must know this, and learn that, and learn that, and learn that, and learn that. And in third year, they're saying, that's great. You need now to use that information. If you were the auditor, how would you audit this? In second year, most of your auditing was like, this is what auditing is. This is what auditing is. This is what independence is. This is what. Now they're saying, sweet, how would you audit the company? Go and do the audit. And that's completely different because it looks nothing like the textbook. None of the stuff is going to look like the textbook because the textbook kind of says, this is how an audit works. That's fantastic. But in reality, every single one of your clients works completely differently. Their businesses are different, their industries are different, the size of their business, the risks, the people who own them, the products they make. No two of your clients are ever going to be the same. So no two of the problems that you, as an accountant, as an auditor, as a tax professional, no two problems will ever be the same. So you are not studying in a way that is designed to solve problems you've seen before. You need to move away from theory, from memory, from textbook memorization, because Psych is saying you need to learn how to solve problems that you've never seen before.